Hey guys, I have here my copy of the summer book, and what happened was that I had way too much chocolate and now I have all this energy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this for you, and I'm probably not, no, maybe I could get through it tonight. But I'm going to sort of break it down into episodes to not overwhelm you. In the assignment I posted, there's a documentary. It's not too long, it's an hour long. It gives you some good background information on the kind of person that Tove was. And, well, in any case, this is one of our translated texts. It was originally written in Swedish. Why is that? Well, because Tove, even though she's from Finland, there is a population of Swedish-speaking Finns. So the story goes that back in the day, Finland was owned by Sweden. Basically, it was part of the Swedish kingdom. So a lot of the nobility was actually Swedish speaking. Yes. So overall, we can infer that Tove came from a pretty well-off family, like not millionaires, but they were pretty well off. Educated, and she came from a family of artists as well. So in any case, like, feel free to start watching this before you watch the documentary, but it's not a bad idea to watch the documentary first. Right, so this is my copy of the book, the summer book. There's also a winter book. So as you know, the title is the first authorial choice. So summer, we have all of these associations with it. Of course, if you're in the northern hemisphere, summer is basically May, June, July, August, right? It's different in the summer, in the southern hemisphere. So you have the PDF version. I think your version might also have a foreword by Esther Freud. So Esther Freud is the great-great-granddaughter of Sigmund Freud. Yeah, just so you know. So we have our title, The Summer Book, from the viewer perspective. We have all sorts of associations, right? We perhaps think of happiness when we think of summer, vacation, life, right? So that idea of what summer is all about contrasts a little with the content of the book, because it's about a lot of things. It is about mourning, right? So if you've seen the documentary, you know that when Tova's mother passed away, that is when she decided to write this book, right? And there was a lot going on in her family, so she had two brothers, right? One of those brothers was married and they had a little girl. So this is Tova's niece Sophia, who is a character in the summer book, right? So you've already seen another text, for instance, in The Ocean at the End of the Lane, how you can have a character that's based on a real person, but it is still a character, right? So the narrator in Ocean at the End of the Lane is basically Neil Gaiman as a child. Here we have something to that effect, where Sophia is based on the real life Sophia, who is Tove's niece, right? But Sophia, the character, is more than one thing, because she is the niece. So when Tove's mother died, Sophia's mother also died, right? So her brother became a widow, right? And like, you know how I like my levels of analysis. So on one level, this is the story of Sophia, but Sophia also represents this vulnerable figure who is suffering loss, right? And because we have a child as a character, right? And Sophia is 6 years old. So we have, if you're thinking about comparing, contrasting, right, different characters. So if you think that we have Jack in Room who's 5, the narrator in Ocean who is 7, and Sophia who is 6, right? So at 6 years old, you know, you're relatively independent, but you don't have the ability to understand absolutely everything. You don't have all the language that an adult might have available to them to make sense of the world and what's going on, right? So as a symbol, a child, of course, represents innocence. But as we're going to see this as we read, that there are a lot of things that are left unsaid. And if you think about it simply, it's because the child does not know. But if you think about it at another level, it's because there are no words, right, to truly make sense of a great loss, like the loss of a parent, or in this case, the loss of a mother. So yes, it's a very, as I say, it's a very gentle novel, right? It's sad, it's melancholic, but it's also it's about life, right? If you remember in Life on Mars, right? We went through it quite quickly, but in Life on Mars, it could be said that is also about mourning, and it could be said that when we suffer a loss, we become separate, and it's like we go to Mars, right? And we go there for a while, and we heal, and then we come back. So the summer book is a little bit like that. Culturally, Finns, they go to islands, and this is very, very simple living conditions, right? And for them, simplicity is luxury. So you have to bear that in mind, sort of the Finnish culture. But when we see these characters come to the island during the summer, in a way, in a manner of speaking, they're getting away from the city, from the hustle and bustle. And this is tradition. This is something that Finns do. But in the form of a novel, which is fictional and is filled with symbols, when this family go to the island, and this is a summer island, it's like they're getting away because they are in pain, right? And they're there to sort of reconnect and be with each other until they're ready to go back to the city. So your PDF doesn't have this. I'm going to read this out. I don't know if you know Philip Pullman. He wrote the Historic Materials trilogy, Northern Lights, and they made movies and there's a series. So in any case, he's a good writer. He's like a bit of a C.S. Lewis, if you know C.S. Lewis. So Tove Jansson was a genius. This is a marvelous, beautiful, wise novel, which is also very funny, right? And then we have Esther Freud, who again is Sigmund Freud's great-great-great-granddaughter. Eccentric, funny, wise, full of joys and small adventures. This is a book for life. All right, so not too bad, these reviews. Okay, so we have the title as an authorial choice. There are some thanks here. And we have the names of the chapters, right? This is also an authorial choice, right? So overall, we get some pretty neutral terms for the names of these chapters. I quite like it that the chapter Midsummer is basically in the middle, right? So there's a you could in principle read these out of order, right? It's not sequential, right? It's just little moments of life on the island. But Midsummer's in the middle. Yes, I'm just going to read through the chapter. So we have the morning swim. This is the only chapter that talks about an activity. Then we have moonlight. We know how important the moon is, right? The association with the feminine. So this is a novel that starts off with a loss, right? So the reader's told that Sophia's mother has died, right? And then it's not brought up ever again, but you have to bear that in mind throughout the rest of the novel so that you understand what's going on, right? So that when characters aren't saying anything, you know that this is what's going on. So we have moonlight, the magic forest, the scolder, this is a kind of bird, Berenice, the pasture, playing Venice, dead calm, the cat, the cave, the road, midsummer, the tent, the neighbor, the robe, the enormous plastic sausage, the crooks, the visitor, of angleworms and others, Sophia's Storm, Day of Danger, and the last chapter is called August. Okay, I'm not going to read the foreword, right? I might read it later, but right now, not in the mood. And you can do that. Like, you can skip around, right? So let's say that you start a chapter, you're not really into it, you can try out another one. Yeah? The Summer Book by Tove Jansson. The Morning Swim. It was an early, very warm morning in July, and it had rained during the night. The bare granite steamed, the moss and crevices were drenched with moisture, and all the colors everywhere had deepened. Below the veranda, the vegetation in the morning shade was like a rainforest of lush, evil leaves and flowers, which she had to be careful not to break as she searched. She held one hand in front of her mouth and was constantly afraid of losing her balance. "What are you doing?" asked little Sophia. "Nothing," her grandmother answered. "That is to say," she added angrily, "I'm looking for my false teeth." The child came down from the veranda. "Where did you lose them?" she asked. "Here," said her grandmother. "I was standing right there, and they fell somewhere in the peonies." They looked together. "Let me," Sophia said. "You can hardly walk. Move over." She dived beneath the flowering roof of the garden and crept among green stalks and stems. It was pretty and mysterious down on the soft black earth. And there were the teeth, white and pink, a whole mouthful of old teeth. "I've got them," the child cried and stood up. "Put them in." "But you can't watch," grandmother said. "That's private." Sophia held the teeth behind her back. "I want to watch," she said. So grandmother put the teeth in with a smacking noise. They went in very easily. It had really hardly been worth mentioning. "When are you going to die?" the child asked. And grandmother answered, "Soon. But that is not the least concern of yours." "Why?" her grandchild asked. She didn't answer. She walked out on the rock and on towards the ravine. "We're not allowed out there," Sophia screamed. "I know," the old woman answered disdainfully. "Your father won't let either one of us go out to the ravine, but we're going anyway, because your father is asleep and he won't know." They walked across the granite. The moss was slippery. The sun had come up a good way now, and everything was steaming. The whole island was covered with a bright haze. It was very pretty. "Will they dig a hole?" asked the child amiably. "Yes," she said, "a big hole," and she added insidiously, "big enough for all of us." "How come?" the child asked. They walked on towards the point. "I've never been this far before," Sophia said. "Have you?" "No," her grandmother said. They walked all the way out onto the little promontory, where the rock descended into the water in terraces that became fainter and fainter until there was total darkness. Each step down was edged with a light green seaweed fringe that swayed back and forth with the movement of the sea. "I want to go swimming," the child said. She waited for opposition, but none came. So she took off her clothes slowly and nervously. She glanced at her grandmother. You can't depend on people who just let things happen. She put her legs in the water. "It's cold," she said. "Of course it's cold," the old woman said, her thoughts somewhere else. "What did you expect?" The child slid in up to her waist and waited anxiously. "Swim," her grandmother said. "You can swim." "It's deep," Sophia thought. "She forgets I've never swum in deep water unless somebody was with me." And she climbed out again and sat down on the rock. "It's going to be a nice day today," she declared. The sun had climbed higher. The whole island and the sea were glistening. The air seemed very light. "I can dive," Sophia said. "Do you know what it feels like when you dive?" Of course I do, her grandmother said. You let go of everything and get ready and just dive. You can feel the seaweed against your legs. It's brown and the water's clear, lighter towards the top with lots of bubbles. And you glide. You hold your breath and glide and turn and come up. Let yourself rise and breathe out. And then you float. Just float. And all the time with your eyes open, Sophia said. Naturally, people don't dive with their eyes shut. Do you believe I can dive without me showing you? The child asked. Yes, of course, grandmother said. Now get dressed. We can get back before he wakes up. The first weariness came closer. When we get home, she thought, when we get back, I think I'll take a little nap. And I must remember to tell him this child is still afraid of deep water. Okay, so this was our chapter 1. So we have 2 characters, a grandmother, and this grandmother is based off of Tove Jansson's own mother, who was Sophia's grandmother, right? So the grandmother's at the end of her life, the granddaughter is at the beginning of hers, right? And we have this connection to nature and a very free kind of relationship, right? We have a little girl with character. She has high self-esteem. She's confident. She's a go-getter. She's a problem solver. She takes initiative, right? So sort of a healthy, happy child. Yes, and this is sort of it's a light bit of humor. The episode with the false teeth, and this is sort of very typical of children that they have no filter, right? They've not been conditioned yet. They've not been told about taboos, right? And we as readers, we still don't know that Sophia's mother has passed away. But when we do know, we can understand why this might be on her mind. Yep. So this is basically what I have for this video. Of course, there's a lot of imagery and metaphor. You can go through it. This is very, very water-centered, and we've seen water before as a symbol. So here, water seems to be a metaphor for life, right? So we have the grandmother. She's not diving in anymore, but she knows, she remembers. So we have this theme of memory, right? You're at the end of your life. There are things you don't do anymore, but you remember. And then we have a little girl who's just getting used to living, right? And sort of building up the courage to dive in. Yeah, so it's a good chapter. And I'll move on to the next one.